So the Beijing 2022 Olympics have been an absolute disaster for China. And that is something they could not afford. It's actually incredibly dangerous how bad this Olympics was for China, particularly for the Chinese leadership. I kid you not, the Olympics has played such a significant role in the dictatorship and authoritarian system that China has. In fact, it's exactly how the current dictator, Xi Jinping, got to power in the first place. The implications are huge, and all of the foibles that have led up to this have been funny, but also a bit alarming for China. The pure paranoia that the government is facing right now, just to make sure that nothing negative is said or posted about the Olympic Games, is very real. In fact, Chinese microblogging service Weibo, which is kind of like China's Twitter, deleted over 41,000 posts for creating trouble during the Beijing Winter Olympics, and it asked the users to keep calm when commenting on the games. It also banned 850 accounts from posting. And it was a disaster from the get-go. This app that all Olympians and anyone in the Olympic Village in Beijing were forced to download. And it turns out that this app not only spied on the Olympians, but also contained a huge list of blocked words. A huge amount of them were related to Tiananmen Square. They don't want anyone talking about the Tiananmen Square massacre. For example, if you translate it, it says 89 college students killed. I mean, you can't even say the word Xi Jinping, which is the leader of China. You can't say the demise of the CCP. You can't look up how to make C4 explosives or how to make an atomic bomb. Who's making atomic bombs in their garage? Or horny girl The list is exhaustive. It shows the amount of paranoia that China would have to censor phrases like this. There were over 2,000 of them. The thing is, you know about all these boycotts and people claiming hashtag boycott Beijing 2022? Well, it's actually working. Viewership for the Olympics worldwide is down 43%. People just don't care. They don't want to watch it. And that's a great thing for sponsors to learn that they shouldn't back a genocide Olympics or support a country that's government is currently committing some of the worst human rights atrocities in modern day. It is a modern day Nazi Olympics. Some people cite the fact that they're boycotting the Olympics for the fact that China has genocide camps running in Western China right now. China had the nerve to actually choose a Uyghur minority person to light the Olympic torch as a slap in the face to the rest of the world to say, yes, we do have genocide camps and concentration camps in Western China, but we don't care because we know how to manage our own country without your pesky interference and human rights allegations. Of course, that Uyghur athlete placed 43rd place in one of the events and was never heard from again. China's claim is that they are resting because they were stressed out from all of the pressure that people were giving them online. Sure, I bet that's what happened. In fact, a lot of the journalists who are there because of the Olympics were waiting for hours after the event to interview the Uyghur athlete, and they never showed up. I wonder where they went. One of my favorite disasters of the Olympics was the actual place that they chose to have the ski jumping event. This is apocalyptic. I mean, you really can't make this up. Now, the funny thing is when I first saw this picture and some of the imagery around it, with the ski jump going through these cooling towers, only smokestacks, and this very gross, horrifying industrial type area, looks like something out of a disaster zone in a Star Wars movie. The first instinct that I had was, oh, that's normal. Because I lived in China for 10 years. A lot of the country actually looks like this. You can find beauty in the Chinese countryside, but by and large, China's, or at least developed China, kind of looks like this. Never mind the propaganda you see of all these gleaming city centers and stuff. The actual life of China looks kind of like this. You can go to any province. Like, it doesn't really matter where you go, you're going to find this type of imagery. And then I realized, well, why would they choose this area of Beijing for a international showpiece of how beautiful China is? Well, in fact, I actually read some of the online commentary and I looked at some of the online coverage from Chinese people or from Chinese correspondents and state media. And people were impressed to show off that China is very developed and has things like cooling towers and has things like power plants. And I'm serious when I say that is exactly the sentiment that is carried throughout a lot of China. A lot of my best friends up in northern China, when we used to ride motorcycles together, we'd get to a lookout point, get off our dirt bikes, and I would face one direction and they would face another direction. I would look out into the grasslands and say, this is absolutely beautiful. What untouched nature, very rare for China. They would look out into the other direction and say, look at all these smokestacks. Finally, we're not poor anymore. This kind of tone-deaf attitude, and it shows you how out of touch the Chinese leadership is with the rest of the world. By the way, when you're at that event, or really any event around the Chinese closed circuit village, if you're a journalist, I highly recommend that you go check out some of the forced labor camps. And I'm not talking about the ones in Xinjiang. You see, China has forced labor all over the country. They've been doing this for ages now. Oftentimes you get little notes inside of your Walmart, decorations for Halloween that will say, hey, I'm in a forced labor camp, send help, here it is. There's actually quite a few of them. Just within 10, 12 miles of this Olympic facility, you can go visit the forced prison labor. It's a fantastic way to spend your time and get to know the local culture. Some people just don't find it interesting. Some people just kind of don't want to support an authoritarian regime in general. The Beijing Olympics have been in the headlines for all the reasons that China doesn't want them to be. They're even running propaganda campaigns with the pro-Chinese government shill accounts on YouTube, talking about how happy the Olympians are in the prison-like conditions of the Beijing closed village. But yeah, the athletes are very unhappy with the conditions in China, and that's after China rolled out the red carpet and prioritized everything in the Olympic village, and it still just wasn't good enough. Now, that's not the Olympians being picky. China just doesn't have good standards in general. It's because of the lack of oversight and the blame game. The people at the top of the chain of command never received the blame. I mean, kind of like China's overnight COVID hospitals that everyone was applauding them for building in record times. The pipes broke and water sprayed everywhere. Just like that, it's happening in athletes' apartments in the Olympic Village as well. What a surprise. Therefore, things are just never done properly. You'd know if you lived in China and had to deal with any government bureaucracy. And of course, after the Finnish athlete posted these photos to show her absolutely disgustingly flooded room, it's alleged that the Chinese authorities asked her and tried to coerce her into taking those photos down. Leave it to China to break the rule that says Olympians are allowed to speak whatever they want to speak. A Polish skater said she was living in fear in a Beijing isolation ward and cried until she had no more tears. The Finns have claimed a hockey player is quarantined for no reason, and the Germans are frustrated that there is no hot food at the skiing. What are you talking about? This food looks excellent. But yeah, the food being served is bad, and I'm not surprised at all. China is absolutely terrified of any bad press at the moment, because the only reason that China likes to host events like this is for a chance to show the world that their authoritarian piece of shit government is justified and awesome. It's all propaganda. How China got another Olympic bid after having concentration camps and genociding minorities in Western China truly escapes me, but actually, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's because the Olympic Committee is a total piece of shit. Do you remember that Chinese tennis player, Peng Shuai? You remember how she accused a high-level government official of abuse and then disappeared? Do you remember her abuser, that ghoul-looking zombie wanker called Zhang Gaoli? Guess what? He was close with the Olympic president, Thomas Bach, and it turns out he's one of the main reasons that Beijing got the Olympics this year. So we're not talking about a moral organization on either side. We would be doing an absolute disservice if we didn't bring up the immense amount of cheating at the Olympics. Would you be surprised to know that China took some medals in events that it actually cheated in? Well, I wouldn't. It's been doing this for ages. You can go back all the way to when they had underage gymnastics participants, more than once now, in different instances of Olympics, where they lied about the participant's age, and then the Olympian won. In this case, you had people just actually pushing each other over. You really can't make this up. All of the blatant and slap in the face instances of China cheating in the Olympics aside, would it surprise you if I told you that a Chinese ice skating judge who was previously banned for unfairly favoring his own country's athletes, during the Korean Olympics, is back and actually serving on a technical judging panel at the Beijing Winter Olympics? You really cannot make this up. Not to mention all of the defense that the International Olympic Committee is doing to wipe every instance of cheating off of the internet and censoring on behalf of the Chinese government. This has given me serious vibes of the WHO's mishandling of COVID and how they believed the Chinese government's lies in the beginning as well. Perhaps one of the best efforts that China went through to try to get the most medals was when they tried to malnourish the foreign athletes. Look at the food. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Western food, as they call it in China, xitan. Xitan just means anything outside of China. That's just foreign food. Foreign Western food is not a forte of China, but you'd think they would have rolled out the red carpet for an event that is just so damn important for their face, for their international image, and for this propaganda push that they're trying to make. Certainly they know that the athletes are going to spread around the absolute slop garbage that they had to eat 3 times a day, by the way. What you're seeing that was eaten 3 times a day for 3 meals. They, of course, are going to share this around. But to Chinese officials, it was more important to get that bribe money, cut costs, and in fact, even serve food full of hormones and pesticides and all sort of contaminants. Really just poison. It's quite alarming that China even had to tell their own athletes not to eat the meat at the Olympics because they didn't want them to test positive for hormones or steroids, because that is how prevalent those things are in meat in China. And that is something I'm glad I'm not putting into my body anymore. We had Zhu Yi, previously known as Beverly, an American citizen, who decided to renounce her citizenship and to go skate for China. Very patriotic, very nice of her, right? Well, it wasn't nice of her because she fell, and then China tried to scrub all instances of her fall off of the internet. They even coerced foreign news networks to get rid of it. They did it because there were trending articles and trending hashtags all over China that were calling her a traitor, that were calling her a disgrace, and telling her to go back to her country. That is the kind of welcome she received when she decided to become a Chinese citizen. You see, the Chinese government doesn't want to upset any of their other successful propaganda pieces, the ones that look more palatable to them, because remember, the whole looking foreign thing in China is much more important than looking Chinese, unfortunately. They don't want to upset people like Eileen Gu, who have also abandoned their home country and nationality in favor of China, to make China look good and to be used as a pawn in the great propaganda game that China is playing right now. They don't want to upset people like her because they're actually working in their favor. Now, Eileen actually made a very big mistake, but actually was originally promoted by the Chinese government. She was the darling child, used as a propaganda piece to show the downfall of America and how these American girls like Eileen are betraying their own country to come to the motherland of China. All of that stuff aside, all that propaganda push aside, Eileen went online to defend herself and say that anyone in China can just go on the App Store to download a VPN to get past China's block internet. Now, China actually ran with this. They want people to think, well, at least people in the West, to think that the Great Firewall of China is not there for censorship and that anyone can access the free internet with a simple VPN. But eventually that reached the ears and eyes of Chinese people who cannot, in fact, see the rest of the internet. And a lot of Chinese people were very mad at Eileen for lying, saying that they were allowed to use a VPN to access the outside world, when in fact, you go to jail if you use a VPN in China. Not only do you go to jail, if you're a Uyghur person, an ethnic Uyghur minority from Western China, you get charged as a second-degree terrorist just for using a VPN to go on Facebook or YouTube. So, things are backfiring for her. So why is the disaster of this 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics so important or so destructive to the reputation of the Chinese government, more specifically to the reputation of the current dictator Xi Jinping? Well, people don't realize how important the Olympics actually are in the CCP's leadership, or at least cementing it in public knowledge that the Chinese government's authoritarian role is necessary and celebrated. You see, Xi Jinping was given political responsibility of the 2008 Beijing Olympics, which actually cemented his role in the future leadership of China. That's how important it is. The propaganda show, the real PR success story of the Beijing Olympics, led China to become an international force to be reckoned with, at least in the public eye, due to the amazing spectacle that the Chinese government put on. Contrast that with the absolute disaster that is unfolding right now and the very secretive internal turmoil that the Chinese Communist Party is going through at the moment starts to shake up a little bit. You see, if you're the leader responsible for the Olympics and you are currently the leader while an Olympics is happening, the entire international world and community is watching you with bated breath, making sure that you are in fact the leader that you claim to be. And in a one-party state, in a dictatorship, in an authoritarian system, that image is incredibly important. And that is an image that is quickly falling apart. I want to say thank you so much to all the people that support me on patreon.com/Laowai86. You guys are the only reason this channel can keep going. And I want to say thank you so much to Laowinners, and I'll catch you on the next one.